Well,
what are you doing?
You told me to film.
But it's you're moving it around.
there are 4 types of sperm cells that this can make. And they are big H, big R, big H, little r, little h, big R, and little h, little r.
What if they not in that order?
Doesn't have to be in that order. This one over here can only make 1 type of sperm cell, little h, little r.
Yeah, well.
Now, you could write that 4 times and do a big 16 square Punnett square, but you don't have to. You can only write it once. So it doesn't matter if you write it 4 times or 1 time, you're going to get the same ratios. So just a little trick there to speed things up. But you should have got the same answer whether you did it 4 down or 1. You should have got big H, little r, little r, little h, little h, big R, little r.
So do you have to get both right to get the...
Hold on. What does H stand for? Do y'all remember?
It was
hanging.
No. H was the hanging thing. The earlobe.
Hanging earlobe.
And then R was
So this was a
rolling.
hanging roller. This was a hanging
No rolling.
non-rolling.
The other one's non-hanging roller.
What?
Non-hanging.
This is a
Non-hanging.
Well, instead of calling it non-hanging, let's call it attached. Same thing.
Attached rolling and
It's
then
attached roller.
attached not roller is the next one.
An attached not roller. 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 ratio.
Documented by Gingers.
Wow.
If I did the 6, I did it 16, so I did like 4 to 6.
Or you could do, 4 out of 16 is the same as 25%. You could say 25, 25, 25, 25.
Sweet. And so that's 5.
5 points if you got that.
Oh, so we don't have to do both to get 5 points?
Nope. And then the other one was this. Big H, big R, little r.
I'm making a documentary on you.
Cross with... I'm doing this up here.
Alright, I just bumped his eye.
Big H, little r, little r. Basically, this can only make 2 types of sperm cells. Big H, big R, or big H, little r. Now, you could write those again, but it's really a waste of time. You don't have to. And over here, this can only make 2 types of sperm cells. Big H, little r, which I'll put right here. And little h, little r, which I'll put right here. And you can write those 2 again and make a 16 square Punnett square. But you'll get the same answers as this Punnett square. Anyway, it's big H, big R, little r. Big H, little r, little r. Big H, little r, little r.
The podium was in the way.
Big H, little r, little r.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I figured it out. Yeah.
So, basically this is a hanging roller, hanging non-roller, hanging non-roller. So they're all hanging. 1 hanging roller to 1 hanging non-roller. 50%. You could have made a big 16 Punnett square thing with this again and that again, but you don't have to. That's
I like Punnett squares.
Sophie likes Punnett squares. Tucker hates Punnett squares.
Sophie likes them.
So 10 extra bonus points on the quiz yesterday. There is no quiz today.
Oh, what?
What?
What? Studied hardcore for it. There's no quiz today?
There is no quiz
What?
today.
What? I want a quiz.
Life is tough. Okay, open your book to page 296.
I have a question.
Yes.
If you got 100 on the quiz yesterday and you got the 5 right,
I'll give it to you.
Wait,
I'll give you 105. I'll give you 105.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, I should have known that and I'd have done it.
So you would have gotten a 5.
I thought you can't go over 100.
Yeah, I'll give it to you.
Well, we got 105.
Did you really?
Yes.
I got like a 20.
But live enough. Okay.
You were singing that song yesterday.
Let's talk about genetic disorders.
My Baloney has a first name.
It's OSC.
This is in your book on page. Okay. Stop. Page 296.
Mr. Willis. Mr. Willis, I have a question.
10.3 is, we're skipping. Everybody note that, we're skipping 10.3. Yes, Brandon.
When's the test on this? Next week sometime?
Do you have your syllabus? That would be an easy question for you.
Whoa, 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 Mr. Willis, no, don't tell me, don't tell me. Don't tell me. Wow, I said don't tell me.
17. Yes, use the restroom.
10 days from yesterday, so it's been 9 days.
Oh, Mr. Willis, look, syllabus, Mr. Willis.
Very nice. So look at it, and then answer the question you just asked.
Okay, what?
Not so hard, Captain.
I've got to use the AP Biology videos for this.
Our test
That was
is.
a tough shot right there.
Haha, Drew.
I love that kid.
Ralph?
Okay.
Is this the
This section talks about human genetic disorders.
Okay.
We need to talk about some of these.
Whoa.
Thank you.
Making fun of them.
The first one it talks about is cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis is a recessive disorder. And what that means is, if you are
Are they twins?
big C, or big C, little c, that's normal. But if you're little c, you can get cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis is a lung disorder.
Can we open something so the camera can see it?
Yeah, we pull left.
So does little c mean that you have it, or does it just mean you can?
Little c means you have cystic fibrosis. And you get it from if you have two parents that are carriers. If you have two parents that are carriers, they can have a 25% chance that they'll have a cystic fibrosis kid.
What is that?
It happens in about 1 in 3,000 births. And what happens is, you have very thick mucus.
Oh, no, we're good.
Your mucus is too thick.
We're good. Okay. Now we're better.
And the thick mucus clogs up your lungs and makes it hard to breathe. But the worst thing about it is it traps bacteria that live in the mucus and multiply, and you get lung infections. And there's other things. Your sweat is real salty. It's what it is. It's a problem with one of the proteins that's supposed to transport chloride across the membrane and can't do it. And it ends up screwing up your lungs. And kids who have this normally die before the age of 20. Every once in a while, you'll have a person survive until 50. But almost all of them die before 20. And they used to die before modern physical therapy. You see these kids with these percussion vests and they're breathing these inhalers that have water and drugs in them. They used to die at about age 8, and now they can live to about 17 or 18.
So those
about
guys,
y'all's age, and then they die.
So those guys are gonna die.
Did you say that was a disease where like their lungs full of mucus?
Yes, cystic fibrosis.
Where they have to beat on
Yes,
the back?
yes. Watch the
There's
video.
There's a guy that like he's a NFL Hall of Famer's son.
Yeah.
He plays football. He's like 28 now, and
he's made it that far.
He's made that far.
That's abnormal
And,
to make it that far.
And he still plays football and everything.
Polycystic fibrosis is less severe than most of his fellow sufferers.
Quiet, please.
But like everyone with CF, he knows how he will die. His lungs will fail. Patients begin to drown in their own mucus from within a few months of birth. Brandy Fisk is 13. On a good day, she endures 2 hours of physical therapy that shakes the mucus from her lungs.
When I'm really doing really good, I don't think about it as much, but like if I'm sick and stuff, then I like start thinking about it. Well, I'm always happy because, I mean, I don't focus on the sickness too much. I just focus on my life and like what's happening. So.
Okay, so we're on average. 90% of patients die because of lung failure. there's a breath to breath burden that people have. And then, of course, there are all the things that we ask them to do to take care of themselves that take up a lot of time.
And tell me this too.
In the beginning, in the very beginning, I felt like she was like a China doll and so fragile that, you know, if I did anything wrong, that she was going to die, or, you know, it was really hard for me. But then, you know, year after year, you know, you adjust, and now it's like a routine. I mean, we all know what has to be done, and you get used to it. And it's just like part of our life now.
Brandy still breathes because of physical therapy and antibiotics. But as well as the lungs, CF clogs the intestines, so sufferers can't digest food properly. They stay small and thin. Both men and women CF patients are usually infertile. And if they live long enough, CF can cause diabetes. Salty sweat is the least of their problems.
She's like a flower. She really is like a flower. She's, I don't know, God has always been with her because she's bubbly and joyful and happy all the time. That's why when she got sick and was really set back, it was like, I thought I was losing her. I really thought. Didn't I was losing her.
If Brandy had been born in any other time, she would already be dead. Long before it was a disease, cystic fibrosis was a curse. Medieval European folklore warned, beware the child whose forehead tastes salt when kissed, for he is cursed and soon must die.
Cystic fibrosis is the leading genetic disorder in whites. It causes deaths in 1 in 3,500 individuals.
Maybe blacks don't get it?
You mean like white, just white people?
No, blacks get blacks can get cystic fibrosis, but they have a genetic disorder that causes more deaths than cystic fibrosis, called sickle cell anemia, that we're going to learn about later.
Tell us why I actually said that.
Tay-Sachs disease. Your book talks about Tay-Sachs disease. It's another recessive disorder. Again, most people are big T or big T little t. If 2 of these get married, they have a 25% chance of having a little t kid. That kid has Tay-Sachs disease. Tay-Sachs disease, often identified by a cherry red spot on the back of the eye. It's predominant among Jews of Eastern European descent, caused by the absence of enzymes responsible for breaking down fatty acids called gangliosides. Normally, gangliosides are made and then dissolved as the brain develops. However, in a person affected by Tay-Sachs disease, the gangliosides accumulate in the brain, inflaming nerve cells and causing mental deterioration. Kids with Tay-Sachs disease die usually before the age of 4 or 5 years old. And there's no cure for this or cystic fibrosis. We haven't found any way to effectively deal with it. One thing they're working on with cystic fibrosis is kind of neat. It's called viral therapy. What they do is they grow a virus in a dish in the lab. And they take, viruses have harmful DNA. I don't know if you know how viruses work. But what a virus does is it injects harmful DNA into cells. That's how it works. And we'll talk about viruses later in the year. But what they do is they take a virus that would normally inject harmful DNA, they pull out the harmful DNA, they put in a good C gene in the virus, and they put the virus in these inhalers, and the kids with cystic fibrosis, they spray the viruses down into their lungs, and the viruses inject the good gene into their cells of their lungs, and the lungs start making good mucus instead of bad mucus. And it makes them live longer. It's called viral therapy. It's not completely a cure because they still die eventually, but they it extends their life. So it's helpful. This is a girl with phenylketonuria, which is actually, if you know that you have it, you just change your diet and avoid eating the wrong foods. It's chemicals found in different types of foods. Diet Cokes have this chemical. It's called phenylalanine. That if you have phenylketonuria and you eat some phenylalanine or you drink some phenylalanine, your body breaks it down the wrong way and it turns into a poison and kills you. All you got to do is avoid eating stuff with phenylalanine and you're fine.
The first time you
So
eat
they're
it,
raising
die.
money for it. So she has it, but nothing's really wrong with her as long as she doesn't eat the wrong thing. Yeah.
If she actually takes a sip, would she die or would she just get sick?
I don't know how much of it you'd have to drink, but it does cause change it into a poison.
Is that common? Is that chemical common in a bunch of things?
Yeah, but I'm not sure what. The only thing I've ever heard is that diet soft drinks have a lot of it. Phenylalanine. This is sickle cell anemia. This is the major, the leading genetic disorder in the world is sickle cell anemia. Your book doesn't talk about it, which is, I think they talk about it in a later chapter when we talk about the blood. But it causes the cells to be shaped funny. Some of the blood cells. And this weird shaped blood cell, a couple things: it doesn't carry oxygen very well, and it stops up your very small vessels, your capillaries, and so you have poor circulation, and the blood doesn't reach the hands and feet very well, and it doesn't reach the brain very well. People with sickle cell anemia usually die before about the age of 40, and that's the leading killer in the world. You usually see it in black people because it originated in Africa. Sickle cell anemia has been in Africa for 1 million years, and even before humans it ran around sickle cell. We think some animals had it, and anyway, it's a genetic disorder. That's neurofibromatosis.
Yeah, I got that.
That's a dominant genetic disorder. It causes tumors everywhere. Look at the tumor on this guy's face. He had surgery to remove it.
Does that eye work? With a tumor?
I think so. You ever heard of the Elephant Man?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was born back in the 70s, I think, and he had this disease, neurofibromatosis. And you get tumors all over, and it disfigured his face. This is a computer version of what he would have looked like had he not had the face tumors.
Is he still alive?
No, I don't think he is.
Could they get rid of any of them?
No.
Yes.
You think they'll look like that all
There's a movie about him that was very moving and sad, and it was big when I was a kid.
What's it called?
It's called The Elephant Man.
Oh, okay.
But neurofibromatosis is a dominant disorder. Not all the time are disorders recessive. Sometimes disorders are dominant. And when I say they're dominant, what I mean is this is a disease called Huntington's disease. Nobody in here probably has Huntington's disease. So we're all probably little h, little h. And if you don't have Huntington's disease and you marry somebody who doesn't have Huntington's disease, will your kids have Huntington's disease? No, they won't. However, if you have the big H form of the gene, you have Huntington's disease. It's a dominant disorder. So some people are that. And what Huntington's disease does is you live your whole life normally up until about age 30 or 35. And then you start to have tremors. It's kind of like Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease, y'all heard of that?
Yeah.
You start to have tremors and you lose control of your muscles. And pretty soon you can't walk, and then you're dead. And so people with it usually die between the ages of 40 and 50. And there's no cure for it. And one of the things about it is people who have it, usually they don't realize they've had it, and they've already had kids. And if a person with Huntington's disease marries someone without it, what are the odds of their kids having it?
45%.
75.
Big H, little h?
Yes, it's 75.
Cross with little h, little h? Big H, little h, big H, little h. Those kids have Huntington's?
Oh.
Those kids do not? So each kid has a 50-50 chance of getting it.
Can you get?
And so what happens is these people, and you see it in Central America is where this originated, so a lot of people down there have it. And these kids will see their parents dying of Huntington's, and then they'll know that they have a 50-50 chance of dying that way too. But until this scientist came along, her name was Nancy Wexler, there was no test for it. So you would just wait and see if you had it. Now this lady came along, I'm going to show you this little video, and her mother had it. And so she had a 50-50 chance of having it. And she invented a test for Huntington's. And this talks about her life. She didn't have it, by the way.
Lake Maracaibo, Venezuela. Here, 100 years ago, a woman named Maria Concepcion Soto died of a neurological disorder called Huntington's disease. Today, her descendants carry her deadly gene. Huntington's disease usually strikes in midlife. It causes slow deterioration of the brain and nervous system. There is no treatment, no cure. In New York City, Nancy Wexler is a clinical psychologist. Her mother died of Huntington's.
When my mother was diagnosed, my father took my sister and me into his room and said, your mother has this illness, it's fatal, and each of you has a 50-50 risk of inheriting it. And I think from that day, really my life changed enormously.
In 1981, Wexler went to Venezuela to track the defective gene.
¿Alguien de Lebanon, Flores, Enciarte, que vive aquí? Ángel, yeah.
The villages along Lake Maracaibo contain the highest concentration of Huntington's disease in the world.
Sileida Margarita. Sileida?
Wexler is charting a family tree to establish the pattern of inheritance. Eventually, it will include over 2,000 people. Half stand a 50-50 chance of developing the disease. Many are children. To understand Huntington's, scientists must first find the defective gene. It is an anxious moment for young Beatrice Soto as a sample of her blood is taken. Wexler will collect over 250 samples. Somewhere in the DNA is the answer. At Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, Wexler's samples are turned over to biologist James Gazella. Looking for a gene is like looking for a needle in a haystack. But Gazella had a plan. He would compare the DNA to find a marker, a distinctive pattern that is always inherited with the disease. The search might have taken decades. Incredibly, on the 12th try, he found a marker.
This is an example of typing people with the marker linked to Huntington's disease. Each lane here represents the DNA from a different member of the very large Venezuelan family that Nancy Wexler has collected. And we can correlate the patterns shown here with the relationships of these people in the very large Venezuelan family.
Take a look at this. This is a family tree. It's called a pedigree. We're going to learn about this in just a minute, right after this video.
Like, as to who's parents of the various children, who's the mother, who's the father. We then look at those patterns and see which one correlates in inheritance with the disease gene. In this particular case, it's denoted by the presence of this lower band here underneath a more common band found in everyone. In this case, we have an affected woman who has this band, whose husband is unaffected and doesn't have it. They had 4 children. The first 2 children do not have the band, and they in fact do not have Huntington's disease. The next 2 children do have the band, and they both have Huntington's disease.
For Nancy Wexler and the people of Lake Maracaibo, the discovery of the marker is a mixed blessing. Eventually, it will lead scientists to the gene for Huntington's, and hopefully to a cure.
When you look at those children, and you know that some of those children have to be carrying this fatal gene, and you know what's going to happen to them. You see it, you go in and you visit their mothers and fathers dying in bed, and you know that that's going to happen to them. It's absolutely horrifying. And I know before we found the marker that sometimes I would feel holding a little girl who was dying of Huntington's, and I wanted to shake her as if I could just shake that gene out of her. I could see what was in it. And I would know, where are you and what are you doing to her? And it keeps you possessed. I think we work like madmen down there a lot of times, because you know that if you get there that much sooner, 1 year sooner, then maybe you're saving lives.
It is a race against time to hunt down the deadly gene before a new generation falls victim. But for the children of Lake Maracaibo, there is now hope.
When was that?
When was it made?
Yes.
It was a while back, probably like mid 90s, maybe late 90s. So they're looking for a cure for that, and there is none right now. They do have that test though, so people whose parents are dying from it can take the test and see if they have it. Some people choose not to take it because they don't want to know. Some people want to take it, especially women. Some women will choose not to have kids if they find out that they have it, because they don't want to pass it on to one of their kids. And it's also prenatal. You can test it prenatally. Do you know what prenatal means?
If you're already pregnant.
When you're pregnant, you test your baby for it. Some people, if they test their baby for it and they find their baby has Huntington's, they'll have an abortion. Some people disagree with abortion and that kind of thing. But it happens. Some women would choose to have an abortion if their kid has Huntington's.
How early can they tell if they have that?
Pretty early. With prenatal tests, they can do
What else
pretty
can you
early.
get tested
A few
for?
months. What's that?
When you're prenatal? What else can you get?
A lot of these. You can get tested for cystic fibrosis. Yeah, a lot of these genetic disorders have screenings. Let me show you how that works real quick.
Please come again.
Here it is. Here's a pregnant woman. What they do is they stick a needle into her womb, suction out cells from around the baby. The baby cells are in there. And then they can do the genetic testing on the baby's cells. There's another way to do it when the baby's even earlier. They go in through the vagina with a tube and suction cells out of the placenta. That's the placenta.
That is not happening.
Better than the needle.
And then they have a computer examine the cells, and they can figure out what the different problems are.
Well, that's so stupid. What?
Okay, another thing you've probably heard of is dwarfism. Hold on, I think I have.
Oh, I know a dwarf.
Oh, I've seen that before.
What's the difference between a midget and a dwarf?
Which one?
Midgets have a problem with their growth hormone, and so they don't grow very tall. Dwarfism is a genetic disorder caused by, hold on just a second, caused by a malfunctioning gene.
Bro, can you go to the bathroom while you're pulling this up?
Yes.
What is?
What chapter is this?
11.
Huh?
He's like, can you reach that cereal? Yes, I can. And he reaches up and he grabs with the shelf and he doesn't get it. It's official.
There we go. Dwarfism. That's a normal kid on the left, and that one has dwarfism. You can see some of the characteristics. All those people are dwarfs. Dwarfism is a dominant disorder. Again, all of us here are little d, and if you marry somebody that's little d, you won't have any dwarf kids. But dwarfism is like Huntington's. It's dominant, big D, little d. And if you're a dwarf and you marry somebody normal, chances are you'll have
A dwarf.
a 50% chance of having dwarf kids. If you marry another dwarf, which they often do because they like to hang out with other people their size, what's the chances you'll have a normal kid?
75%.
There's a 25% chance of having a normal kid and a 75% chance of having a dwarf.
Like little
So
people
two dwarfs can have a normal kid. Yes, question.
There we go.
I was gonna ask, but you know that TV show Little People? They have like a normal kid. Like
Yeah.
everybody else in the family.
There's a 25% chance of having a normal kid from two
That'd
dwarfs.
be awesome. Two or three.
They have like 3 dwarfs and like 1 normal kid.
There's 2 normal kids.
Now, let me show you how pedigrees work.
There's 3 dwarfs and 1
I don't
normal
watch
kid.
the show.
There's the girl.
Oh yeah, the little boy. The little boy.
That one that has dwarfism.
Here's how a pedigree works. In a pedigree is a family tree. You have a circle equals a female.
And a square is a male.
Square is a male. A line between them means they got married or had kids. And then this line going down shows their kids. In this one I'm drawing, they had a girl, then a boy, then a girl, then a boy. Now, if you color in the circles or squares, that means that is an affected individual. When we say affected, that means they have whatever trait that you're studying. You saw the big chart like this on the lady who was studying Huntington's disease. But what this means is, let's say we're studying cystic fibrosis, the lung disorder where you have the mucus. These two people, since they're colored in, they have cystic fibrosis. They're little c, little c. These parents, they don't have it, right?
That's correct.
So we know that they have a big C. Can we tell what their other gene is?
Little c.
Has to be a little c because each parent donates one gene to the kid, and if two parents that don't have cystic fibrosis have a kid that does have it, they both must be big C, little c. What about these two?
Big C, big C.
They have. We know they have a big C because they're not colored in. Do we know what the other one is?
No, we don't.
It could be a big C or it could be a little c, so we call that big C question mark. You see?
Yes.
Now, once you find out that these are big C, little z, what do we call big C, little c? It's not homozygous, it's heterozygous. Once we find out that an individual is heterozygous, we usually color them like this.